Every week we do a Q&A with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community to find how they persevered, how they innovated, how they built communities, and how they found solutions. Welcome to the Nametags Chat podcast. All right, welcome to the Nametags Chat podcast. I am Chris Waddell. We speak every week with interesting and accomplished members of the adaptive community. Today we have Tyler Walker, who is a two-time silver medalist in the Paralympics, a four-time Paralympian. Also, am I getting this right? Three-time gold medalist at the X Games?
Yep.
Is that right, Tyler? So you've done a wide variety of different things. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you from New Hampshire. When did you decide that you wanted to be a Paralympian?
Well, I mean, I grew up in front of a ski area. I'm literally 5 minutes from Cannon Mountain. So that had a lot to do with it. You know, everyone goes and skis in the winter. And, you know, it started with my dad building stuff in the garage, various pieces of equipment, and then heard about various adaptive programs at Loon Mountain and Waterville that got me introduced to more equipment. And that was just, you know, to learn the basics of skiing. But actually, when I was maybe 14 or so, I got to see a full-on adaptive race at Breckenridge, and I believe you were there. And got to see all you guys train and see what it looked like to go fast with this stuff. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, I need to do this. This looks so much fun, so much fun.
One thing led to another, and that was it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to it, sure. But, you know, things kind of snowball, you stay interested, and eventually if you don't have too many setbacks, you get there. So.
Right. And you started, I mean, you were saying that your father started building stuff in the garage. Some of that stuff was pretty creative, pretty interesting. I'd imagine a little scary too, right? I mean, the first one was like cross-country skis mounted onto a seat. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So no edges?
No. It was a plastic sled. I think he took my sister's old cross-country skis and bolted them to the bottom, and then had two metal levers with spikes on the end that you'd pull to dig into the snow, and it would turn side to side. And somehow we were allowed to take that up on the lift and ski down. And I think initially I was terrified. I don't remember having a blast immediately. I'm pretty sure I remember some meltdowns about the speed that you could generate, and but you know, eventually when I learned how to control it, it was awesome.
Because it sounds like the kind of thing that you'd be totally out of control.
Yeah, there wasn't a tremendous amount of control in that, but he then got a snowboard and mounted like a plastic seat that he made to that. And that was, I would sit really close to the ground and lean side to side and drag a glove, and that gave me even more control. So then I got to go on steeper hills, and that was more fun, and then got to the point where it was more terrifying again. And then, you know, I got introduced to bi-skiing and mono-skiing, and that really opened up my ability to control that kind of energy and have fun with it. So yeah, it definitely started with a lot of terror, but it got fun quick.
It started with terror, but you continued. Now, I think we do have to explain just why did you need a monoski? Why did you need some kind of adaptive equipment?
Right. So to the casual observer, I am a double amputee at the knee. So I'm not skiing on two legs. And a monoski and a bi-ski are just various different pieces of equipment that allow you to ski in a sitting position using more or less the same technique you would to stand up. Kind of like strapping on a pair of prosthetic legs, more or less. So,
But this was a congenital thing for you, right? This was from birth that you had your legs amputated at 4 years old. Is that right?
yeah. So the technical term for what I had was lumbar sacral agenesis. So I'm missing some pieces of my spine, which made my legs not develop properly. So they were just kind of hanging out with no muscle or use, really. So when I was 4, in an effort to make life a little easier, they were amputated, and that made getting around really easy. I can jump around and on my hands, no problem. Just using a wheelchair most of the time is easier. So that's kind of what's going on.
But that's a lot of what you did as a kid too, right? The jumping around on your hands, where that's a lot of how you got around and got out in the woods and did a variety of different things, right?
Yeah, like I'd spend a lot of time skateboarding after school, or trying to play soccer and not get kicked in the head, or just random adventures.
Can you describe how you skateboard?
I sit.
Can you describe how you skateboard?
Yeah. I sit directly on the skateboard and just on my butt, and I use my hands on both sides of me and push down, just like you would with like one leg on the side, and then lean side to side to turn. And then if I want to jump over or off something, I can turn sideways, grab the board, and do kind of an ollie. It's more like I just grab the board and jump, but it works. Yeah, that's how I do that.
And so were you in the park? Is that where you were skateboarding, in the park, or is it just sort of on the street, or where were you?
Mostly the street. There's not a lot of skate parks up where I live. So it was just, between school and like where my dad had his office. And so after school, we'd skateboard back and find parking lots and little steps or ramps or something we could use to have fun.
And so this idea of doing things, of finding a way, finding a solution, it wasn't foreign to you. I mean, like your father putting cross-country skis on a sled wasn't really foreign. Like it sounded like you were up for the adventure. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. From day one, there was always this, the idea of like, I'm different, and I have a lot of friends doing things that are a little bit more difficult than me, and I need to figure a way to do that. So I need to adapt something, whether it's equipment or technique or I don't know. So that was that's the normal for me. So, even today I'm taking pieces of equipment that someone able-bodied would use for one purpose and repurposing it to allow me to travel, usually with more efficiency in some context. So skateboarding was a great thing, or go on little hiking adventures, especially in like tight spaces where I could excel, or something like that.
So it sounds like is the problem solving part what intrigues you, or is it the necessity, or is it a combination of the two?
The problem solving is definitely intriguing. I really like it. I think ski racing was very fascinating to me because it's a huge game of problem solving. You've got to figure out how to get from the top of the mountain to the bottom faster and more efficiently than everyone else, using the ability that you have and the equipment that you have. And that is incredibly mentally challenging to do. And the environment's always changing. It's very dynamic. It's very risky, and trying to crack that code. I loved it. I loved that mental exercise. And then there's also an element of like there's this whole set of experiences that I want to have, but they're just more difficult because I don't have the legs. But I still want to experience them. So maybe it's not quite like, I'm not going to hike, 15 miles or anything, or, in one go.
What do you mean by hiking?
Like hiking on my hands without just
on
under
your
my own
hands.
power, for example. When I say hiking, that's usually what I mean. So not the help of any engine, usually not in a wheelchair because the trails are just, you can't push a chair there. But using whatever other equipment will get me there. So really the goal is, to still get to the top of the mountain, but figure out another way to do it. And if it takes 3 times longer, it takes 3 times longer, but I can still do it. And ski racing or skiing in general, it's super fun. It's really cool to go out there and go fast. It just takes me different equipment. Yeah.
Was part of the motivation to do something that other people hadn't done, to blaze a new trail?
There was an element to that. Initially, it was just trying to play catch up and get my technique to where you guys were already at. But then, adaptive ski racing is still relatively new compared to a lot of sports. So when I was developing, there was still a lot of room to explore new technology, new technique. And I feel like during my time on the team, which was like 15 years, I had plenty of time to test a lot of that equipment and develop a lot of that technique that has since then been vastly improved upon by everyone else. So being able to do that and having some unknown out there and having to figure it out was super fun. And when you did, man, you were like seconds faster than everyone for maybe like a month or a year if you were lucky, and then everyone would catch up, and then you have to do it all over again. So that was super fun. I love that.
That's the nature of sport. We're talking about some of the equipment. Channy said to say hi. She says hi, Tyler, and Stephanie Mazur-Baron. I said with Tyler, it was never I can't do as I can. He inspired so many. So definitely have some fans in the audience right now, Tyler. How did this work? So you did a bunch of these things. You were hiking, you were skateboarding, and then you locked in on skiing. And not that you didn't continue to do those other things, but skiing became more of a primary focus. How did that end up happening? I mean, you told us about the Breckenridge when you decided that might be where you're going to go to the Paralympics, but when did the plan start?
I think it started because it was an established thing that was recognized, and there was a structure to it, and there was a clear goal. At least for me, was being the best in the world, and there was a clear path to figure that out, to do that. And it's easier to latch onto something when the route forward is easy to figure out. Sorry, maybe repeat the question again, if you would.
So when did it start? When did the plan? You said you saw the US team skiing in Breckenridge and you thought, oh wow, that looks cool. Like that is something I definitely want to do. But when did you start putting, going from beyond the idea of that's what I want to do to this is how I'm going to get there? Did you have that kind of a concrete plan when you started, or was it like, this looks like fun, I'm going to join a team?
I mean, it started with, learning the basics of racing at local programs. And then I was lucky enough to have the right people come into my life at the right time with the right knowledge, and the right motivation. So, several years before I made the team, I had the opportunity to be coached by Chris Young, and he was on the team for a long time and was on a bit of a hiatus, and gave me the guidance I needed to get to that super fast level, that competitive level. And my ability to ski, skyrocketed very, very quickly. And he showed me, what could be possible, and how the team worked and what it would take to become the best and stay there. And then, the head coach of the team right now, Kevin Jardine, and he was a coach when I first started, and he gave me a lot of guidance right away and great coaching, and all these things kind of pulled me along. And Chris Young was a teammate when I got on the team. He requalified and I qualified for the first time, and I still had access to that guidance. And
and that was in New Hampshire, right? That you were with Chris?
Yep. We trained at Loon Mountain most of the time. And, he, with his guidance, it kind of, all of a sudden I found myself on the team. I got the qualifications done, checked all the boxes, and, I was still in high school at that point, and I felt like I kind of got pulled along for the ride for a lot of years, and barely managed to figure out how to make it work in high school, and had to juggle a lot of things in college to make that work also. But
making the academic side work in addition to following the ski racing dream.
It was super hard to do both. I figured out how to do one and then the other, which worked better for me. And but it was always something I wanted to come back to, because there was always more to do for a long time. Anyway, there was always more to do. The ultimate goal is to be the best, and at least leave my mark somehow. And I hadn't done that yet, so it was always like, there's always the next thing to do, the next thing to win, the next equipment to figure out, the next technique to learn. And it becomes it can easily become your whole life, and it did for me. And just that's all I did for at least 10 of those 15 years. And that had a lot of pros and cons to it, by the way. Had a great time. Ended up missing out on a lot of normal life stuff because that became my life. But yeah, it kind of snowballed. And then, it ultimately worked out well for me, but it was, there were some tumultuous times in there too. So
when did you make the team? Was this 19 years old? Were you still in high school, or were you in college, or?
Yeah, I was 17, I think. I was in high school.
17.
Junior in high school, 2003. Yeah, I made it then. And that was cool, because I got my team coat and showed up to school with my new spider jacket with all the sponsors on it. Thought it was awesome.
You wore that to school. Nice.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Barely took that thing off me. Yeah, I started then, and gosh, I almost did it continuously. I had to take like 2 seasons, maybe half off in college to figure that out. But yeah, it was continuous from there. And it was just such an exciting, meaningful thing to do. I could represent my country. And I had this platform to try to figure out how my specific set of circumstances can be the very best athletically that is possible. And I wasn't going to waste it. I was there, so that's what I did.
So you talked about your goal being to be the best in the world. that was the reason you were in it, which to me makes perfect sense. If you're going to do it, I mean, granted, getting that jacket is a nice thing and it's very cool, and I would imagine it elevated your status in high school a little bit, but the objective with this to be the best in the world makes all the sense if you're going to do it. But in looking back on that now, balancing the idea of the sacrifices that you had to make, which sometimes define how great your success is, but also 15 years of competing, you get to the point where you've missed, it's been a big chunk of your life. When you look back on that, do you reconcile the sacrifices that you had to make for the success that you had? Did it make it more worthwhile? Did it make it less worthwhile?
I'd love to tell you that it was all worthwhile. I can't. What I would describe is sometimes it feels like it was worth it. And there are days when it does not. And yeah, I definitely missed out on like early career building, normal relationships, living truly on my own, among a bunch of things. And there were times when like the goal to be the best was consuming in not a good way, and would lead to, you know, bad decisions, bad results, and, you know, poor mental health. But you know, there were other things that kept me going sometimes. A lot of it was getting to travel to cool places. That became a goal that brought me along. My teammates and friends I met along the way, like spending time with them became a goal. And figuring out new equipment, trying to improve the sport with equipment and technique, that became a big goal. And getting to work with different manufacturers and figure that out. That, you know, it developed into different goals, especially towards the end. I got the mental side more figured out and got a healthier approach and started focusing on, you know, those other things that made it fun and worthwhile, as opposed to like trying to win all the time. Yeah.
Did it seem easy in the beginning? Because you said you made the team as a junior in high school, and then your first year on the World Cup, you were runner-up in GS and then won the overall title the following year, right? So
Yeah.
and that was 2006. So that was your first Paralympic. Did you kind of think, well, I've got this is all going in the right direction, let's just keep it going?
Yeah. Initially I was surprised at, I don't take this in a cocky way. I was surprised at how well I was able to do initially. You know, I was told that, you know, my skiing ability was good enough, and I didn't believe it until all of a sudden I was on the podium the first time. And so adaptive ski racing, I think, is a weird beast, because there aren't tens of thousands of people around the world doing this. There's like maybe a couple thousand, and amongst those couple thousand, there's a couple hundred that are pretty decent racers, maybe, or maybe 100. So initially, it seemed relatively easy to get, you know, pretty decent results. But then on the World Cup circuit, when you get to you know, the top 20 or 30 in the world, then it becomes just like any other super competitive sport. And especially now, what it took to do well, to even have a top 10 result, was crazy. You had to have such a risky run with such perfect technique all the time. But that, you're at that point, you're competing against maybe 10 other people, but that's your world. But it still takes just as much effort as, an able-bodied person who's gone through the tens of thousands of other people to get to that, top 10 in the world. It's the same,
the top 1% or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
How could you be surprised that you were good? Because you were measuring yourself against Chris Young, who was one of the best mono skiers in the world. And I remember when you were relatively young that you were talking some smack to him that you were going to beat him. So you had to have some idea that you were pretty good, or was that just smack talk?
Probably a little bit of smack talk. I guess I didn't have enough context yet. I just heard rumors of what international competition was like. So all I had to go with was like the two Chris's and, a handful of other people. And, you guys are very good, but I didn't know how good you were compared to everyone else in the world yet. So turns out you guys are both pretty good anyway. So,
or at least we were, probably more so in my case than Chris's. But so you were successful on the World Cup. Was the Paralympics something different than the World Cup? You had that early success on the World Cup, but Paralympic success was more of a challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, Paralympics are weird. It's the same. Once you get to the top 10 or 20, it's the same people that you've been competing against in the World Cup. But it only happens once every 4 years, so it becomes this all-encompassing goal that everyone wants you to compete in and win. So that to make a handful of races work out in a year is fairly easy to accomplish. If you have a season where like 20% of your race work out, you're having a really good year. That's just how attrition works in ski racing. And but to have a single race or a handful of races work out within a 2-week period of time 4 years from now, that is a super hard nut to crack. You've got to have you have to juggle so many things and get all the stars aligned at that one point in time. So yeah, you've got the same competition, who they are, how they ski, how you ski, but to get all that to come together at one point in time where everyone's kind of dialed up their aggression and their willingness to take chances because you've gotten to the highest point. There's nothing else to qualify for after that. So you're willing to take more chances. So that got really hard to do. And actually, my first 3 times failed spectacularly. Something always seemed to go wrong, even though maybe just before it, I had beaten everyone consistently. And I was, the best trained I'd ever been, especially before Sochi. I had won the World Cup overall that year, and I was the best trained I've ever been. And, you get to this next race, which on paper looks exactly the same as every other race you've done. But, for some reason, because of the hype and the extra importance everyone else puts on it, you feel more pressure to perform, or something always seemed to go wrong, right? That's what I felt like. This was my fate, to just have good results to the Paralympics and then nothing at the Paralympics.
And they didn't work out, and something went wrong. Do you mind if we show a quick video about how something can go wrong?
Yeah, go for it.
So maybe you can talk us through a bit of what you're thinking. Well, actually beforehand. So this is the downhill in Sochi, 2014. What are you
Uh,
thinking before you go through the start, and what do you have to do well versus what your competitors do well?
So this race was, I was in a unique opportunity here because the year before we had a World Cup here and I had won the downhill on this very track. So I knew it was possible to win again. And, I'd had the same equipment and I knew what it would take to have a winning run. And so I knew the track. I, did everything I normally do, to warm up and prepare. But this time around, conditions were a little different. It was a lot warmer. The snow was melting fast, and it was super bumpy. Corduroy, like aggressively bad corduroy the entire way. And if you got off the race line, it was soup. So you had to stay on the race line. You had to ski an aggressive line, or else you were going to crash anyways because you'd end up in the soft stuff. So
did you have to ski this top pitch better? Because I mean, you're a little bit lighter, right? Did you have to ski this top pitch better than your competitors to be able to carry the speed?
I am one of the lighter or lightest people on the circuit. So yeah, I have a hard time conserving momentum. And so to compensate for that, I try to take a more aggressive line and cut off distance that other people might not be willing to do. And I knew in order to win this race, that's what I had to do. There's a line that I had scoped out, and it was very risky. And the chances of success were not anywhere close to 100%. But I'd come so long, I'd come so far and put in so much effort. I was given this platform to be excellent and win this thing that it was like, this is pretty unsafe and I'm not super comfortable, but I'm here and I might as well do it because, this opportunity is pretty rare. So that's what I decided to do.
But that's also kind of the definition of downhill, right? Is that this is sort of unsafe, and my commitment to my line, to my program is in some ways what's going to keep me safe potentially and going to make me fast. Like you can't be waffling, or then you're in big trouble, right?
In a lot of situations, taking the more aggressive line and doing a clean turn, not bleeding speed, that is safer. To the point at which you crash, if you crash. Crashing in downhill is generally catastrophic. You're probably at least going to be out for a couple of days, if not in the hospital. So just because of the energies involved. So yeah, it can be safer to go faster, but backfires horribly if it goes wrong.
All right. Do you mind if I hit start here and you kind of tell us what you're planning to do here? You probably etched this.
Sure. Well, I'll try.
Okay.
Yeah. So go for it.
Okay.
Second in the World Cup ranking.
So the start's pretty flat. I'm just trying to be as clean as possible, and then get set up for the first pitch, which is really steep, and you go from like 40 to 70 right here, and it's super bumpy, which I'm bouncing all over the place, and then you have to set up for this huge cranker turn, and then you're on a big section of super G turns down the slow pitch. And so,
oh dearie me, Tyler Walker, what a horrific crash!
That is a crash. I mean, that is,
yeah.
And give people some context. I was doing the commentary for this, and there were a lot of people who were racing, but were a bit in between racing and slipping the course, where they were doing a wide line and sloughing a lot of speed. You were the first person that I saw who went out and went after that course and went and took the line that if you looked at it, if you look at the course and go, yes, that's the fastest line, you were the one who took that line. And but you had to, right? I mean, this is where you needed that speed coming off of that pitch to take you across those flats that followed.
Yeah, definitely. I need to get as fast as I can get going early and keep that speed. And it takes taking that aggressive line. And so I'm trying to be as clean as possible, not scrub anything. But that also means that, that section that I crashed at, there were a couple of big rollers in there, one or two of which you catch air off of if you're going that fast. And that particular one that I crashed on, I had a fully loaded ski, so I was fully committed in a carve, and which bends the ski up into this giant spring, holding a ton of energy, and that also compresses my suspension at the same time. And that was probably fully compressed at that time. And then I hit that roller, and I was still in a pretty forward, my body weight was a little bit forward of center also. So I catch air and I start going forward, and that ski releases all that energy and the suspension unloads. Well, the suspension was fully loaded, so it couldn't absorb that bump. So all the energy had to go somewhere. It went up and forward, and I ended up catching the tip of the ski on the snow where you're supposed to land, and just blew up after that.
It's the biggest nightmare for every mono skier. I mean, it's sort of the stuff that wakes you up in the middle of the night of coming into and having that ski and the shock completely compressed, and then hitting the jump and knowing that effectively the way it's going to work is that you're going to go up over the handlebars, which is what you did. And you had a concussion, right? Did you break anything? Yeah.
A little. So I got knocked out immediately. My face was like one of the first things to hit, and that knocked me out. And so I don't remember most of that run. I remember going around like the second or third turn, maybe. And then I'm being dragged to a helicopter. That's kind of how my memory went for that.
Well, just what were, because I remember seeing you soon thereafter, and you said you felt like you'd been hit by a truck, like you'd been in a car accident. And so there was the physical recovery, but did you break any bones or not?
Okay,
you were super beaten up.
Yeah, I according to the multiple scans that I got, think I cracked some vertebrae, like the bottom one or two, and damaged some nerves that took a while to heal. And I'm pretty sure I broke a rib, at least, or severely bruised it. It was pretty hard to breathe for a while.
Which is one of those, there's nothing they can do for it anyway, right? If you've broken it or bruised it, they're like, well, it's going to hurt for a while, and eventually it won't.
Yeah, and then the spine was similar, and had some weird, horrible nerve pain for a while, and then I got a really bad concussion, a bunch of scratches on my face. It was kind of, I want to say, run-of-the-mill concussion, if there even is one. The room was spinning for a while, headaches, hard to think clearly, the usual. So the physical symptoms, they cleared up in a couple months, with not too many drawbacks. So physically I recovered maybe in 6 months or so. The toll that took was mental, mostly. And I don't remember the crash, which is a fantastic feature of getting knocked out. I love that.
Other than I just showed it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably good that I went limp immediately. But I think somewhere deep in my brain, I remember it because when I ski now, like if I approach 60 miles an hour, even like low 50s, I get this like panic feeling that creeps up in my whole body, and it just like I'm physically incapable at that point of allowing myself to go any faster. And I will immediately shut it down. And for a while I have either like extremely lucid, dreamy recreations of the event or similar events, just when I'm kind of zoned out, and that would freak me out a little bit. And sometimes the room would start spinning randomly for a while, but it was really like I was never able to allow myself to go that fast again. I tried. I wanted to get back, but my brain has just been like, nope, this is a hard limit now. You're not going to be doing this again. So that actually ended up being okay. Ultimately, I found a workaround and decided to not focus on downhill anymore. It was a hard decision to make. It took a while, but it was like, my brain's not going to let me do this. And I really don't want to crash again anyway. So I'm just going to focus on other events. So I focused on the tech events more, slalom and giant slalom, and did Super G when I had to. And by focusing on GS and slalom, I could spend more energy on it and go to a deeper level and figure out more things and save all my stress for that. Downhill would cause me so much stress. I would lose sleep days before it. I never really felt like I wanted to do downhill. I felt like I had to, because I'd proven that I'd been good at it in the past. And that's what you do. A lot of effort is spent by you and on your behalf to get you to races, so you feel like you want to do these things. But I never really felt like I wanted to do most downhills. And then when I could cut it out, the stress level went way down immediately, and it was awesome. And I could just focus on a couple of things.
You seemed like a risk taker from the early. I remember I was coaching a camp with you when you were like 10 or something like that. And you probably don't remember this. I remember it. You got mad at me because we were working on technique and we were doing some drills, and you wanted to go jump. And so that seemed like a part of who you were from the beginning. You won at the X Games 3 times when going off of those. I mean, they call those jumps like Tombstone Jumps, right? I mean, it looks like a tombstone when you go off of that final jump. So was that leaving behind a part of? I mean, you said you'd never really liked downhill, but you liked sort of the competition part of it, or the toughness part of it, being tough. Was that hard to let go? Because as you're saying, that the emotional recovery was much more challenging than the physical.
I felt like it was, well, when I made the decision, it was at the time, like when I decided to make that decision, it was an easy decision for me to make. And I still had to, justify it and come up with a plan of like, in place of this, I'm going to do that. I still like taking risks. But I take them in different circumstances. So, I like taking risks where if you mess up, there's a reasonable chance of survival or, recovery. And, downhill is risky and it's super fun when everything works out. But if it doesn't, the chances of it going bad are good. So, I take chances in slalom and giant slalom. I love that. But if I mess up, it's not a super big deal. Or, go off jumps where, if I try to find ones where if I come up short, there's a reasonable chance I can ski out of it, or ski steep and deep lines where, I may not charge it in, 60 miles an hour, but maybe 40, fast enough to make it interesting, but still be able to recover. So that works for me. That gets the adrenaline going, the feel good chemicals in my brain, and I'm comfortable with that now, within those parameters.
Our program that this podcast came off of is our Nametags program. And the motto is, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. And so Sochi 2014, you had this horrific crash, and thank you for letting us show people this crash, because it's hard to describe what happened and then describe where you ended up 4 years later. But how mentally did you get to the point where you wanted to ski again, where you wanted to go fast, maybe not downhill fast, but where you wanted to take risks and you wanted to try to be the best in the world? How did what were the steps? Who helped you? How did that work?
Yeah, it was quite the mental journey. So, when that happened in the recovery process, like, I felt like I lost a lot, because I was the best trained I'd ever been. I was in the best shape of my life up until that point. And I had really figured out my equipment for that particular spot, and all that was gone in an instant. And I was in bed long enough where I had to rebuild all the muscles too. So this may seem weird. Actually, you hear about other athletes, having to go through recovery processes after a big setback like that. What I did was nothing unique, but it seems very arduous and there's a process, and it became like another problem to solve. So I wanted to be like, I have a chance to make a comeback, and I want to figure out how to do it. And this is one element, like the problem solving bit. This was fun. How am I going to go from totally destroyed to back to being number one again? And then it was also, pointed out to me by one of my coaches that, like, you're not done yet. You still have more to offer. You are capable of great things in this sport, and you're almost there, but you're not there yet, and you can still do it. So that became another problem to solve. Like, how do I make this work in 4 years from now? How do I get to the point where I'm dominant in the sport again? So I wanted to solve that problem.
Just for context, you'd been dominant in the sport. You'd won globes, you'd won overall World Cup titles for the year. You'd won discipline titles, you'd won races, but you'd been shut out as far as medals were concerned in the Paralympics.
Yeah.
Was that a driving force for you?
That was different. The feeling of being shut out from success at Paralympics, it was a driving force at one time. Along the way, it took a big toll on my mental health. I went to some pretty dark places. I just could not understand, why is this happening? Like, I can have all the success outside of Paralympics, but not in Paralympics. Now, this is a weird thing for me to talk about, because it's like, well, most people don't even make, college competition or whatever. But, I was given this platform. I had the opportunity. I was put in the starting blocks. So I really wanted to figure this out. And the desire to win just like destroyed me mentally. So my last couple of years on the team, I started working with a sports psychologist, and went into personal issues and sport related issues, did the whole thing, and, you know, figured out a way for me to focus my mental and physical energies during that 2 minutes of intense competition. That was really the goal, was like, walk me off the ledge and get me the tools to focus mentally on that 2 minute period of time. And we did that, and we steered it away from needing to win all the time to going towards, like, what is the next goal? What is the thing in this particular race? What's the next task I need to accomplish? So I'm in the starting gate. You know, the first immediate task is to push through the wand quickly and get a few stabs with the outrigger. You know, that is the immediate task. What's the next one? Well, set up for the first gate. The next task, for the second gate. You know, it just became like a series of, what is the next immediate task you need to accomplish? And if you accomplish enough tasks, you get to the bottom, and you do those successfully, you can generally do well. So we changed that whole approach to just focusing on the present. What is the next thing I need to do? And that totally worked, and it was awesome. And then in addition to that, I worked a lot of my technique. I worked a ton on equipment. Worked a lot with a company called Dynaccess, and we worked on different frame geometries and shock absorbers and tweaking everything you can imagine to get a piece of equipment to work for my unique body. And, you know, they are brilliant, and they came up with solutions after lots of testing, and it allowed me to, you know, express my full capabilities on the hill.
So you put a lot of force into the ski. Like, you, with what you're able to do with angulation, you're able to, and it's been measured, right? So Joachim has measured, like, how many G's you're pulling in a turn, right? How many G's, do you know what that is?
I don't have my numbers in front of me, but I'm sure we could ask him if it's possible. I don't
know if they're still
know
online.
Exactly. More than a fair bit more than one, obviously.
I feel like it was like 3 or something like that he said, that it was just so impressive that you're pulling 3 times your body weight in, you know, putting that force into the turn, and was consistent. So this is a reason why you have to work on your equipment, because your ability is demanding the most from the equipment too. So the mental and the physical, or the mental and the equipment side as well.
And the equipment side for us is so important, because, you know, you have to make it work for your particular body, and, you know, depending on your injury level, everyone's super unique. And then for every race, you know, you can only set it up one way, and then you have to go. And hopefully you've set it up in such a way where it, you know, it gives you, you know, I can go so far with it this way or so far with it this way, but hopefully that distance and energy I can put into this run allows me to, you know, have a ski to my full potential. Like, you can set up your monoski to drop 30-foot cliff, or you can set it up to turn really well, but you can't set it up to do both of those things. You can set it up to somewhere in the middle. Hopefully where that middle is for you works for that particular course. So that takes a ton of testing and figuring out and tweaking. And but yeah, we spent a lot of time doing that and figured it out.
So when did you feel ready, and when did you decide that that Pyeongchang was on the horizon for you?
My kind of the end of my second to last season, so end of the 2017 season. For a bunch of factors, I just decided that the next season was going to be my last. You know, I was going to be, at the end of Pyeongchang, I was going to be 32. You know, I have a college degree, but I want more. there's other things I want to do in my life. And I've done almost every permutation of ski racing you can do at this point. I've accomplished a lot of my goals, not all of them, but I feel like I've made my mark, and I've furthered the sport. But I can't do this indefinitely. Like the kinds of runs I need to have to be successful are very risky, and my body's not going to hold up to that forever. And I just want to do something else. So I was going to give that last season, a different approach and a lot of effort. And if it worked out, great. If it didn't, I'm still going to move on, because just I have to, for life and mental well-being and all kinds of things. So that was just something I kind of told myself, and that was what I was going to do. And luckily, everything worked out really well. So
how was the World Cup season working out before that? Did you feel like you were on top of your game?
Yeah, I felt, especially in slalom and giant slalom, that I had figured out some, like, a set of technique and equipment that was working really well for me and highly competitive. And I got back to that that feeling you get when you're in the zone, where you're just feel super highly coordinated and you're super focused, and you do a race like that and you cross the finish line, you're like, I've won, I know. And you look up the scoreboard and it's like, yeah, I won. Like, I was starting to feel that again. And you get to the bottom, it's like, there's no way anyone beat that, and for sure they didn't. So I got that feeling back, and it's a rare feeling, but when you've got everything figured out for a brief period of time, you do get that. So I was feeling pretty good, and I had got the mental stuff under control. And I went into it at a better place.
Did you feel, was there anything different when you approached the Paralympics? Like you'd had success on the World Cup, but then there's more pageantry, right? I mean, you can go to a World Cup and it's like going to a junior race where there isn't much in the way of fans or any of that stuff. But then you go to the Paralympics and you've got opening ceremonies, you have everybody parading in, you have people buying tickets, watching the whole thing. Did it feel different when you got to the Paralympics, or did you just feel ready to go?
I've always approached the Paralympics with the understanding that it is different. It's a different thing. It's culturally important. It's culturally significant to the world, which makes it really fascinating to me. So I'm not going to miss out on that more than necessary. So I want to see the opening ceremonies, and I want to put on the uniform, and play my role. And I love that, even though I might have to race the next day. So, and I'm going to use that stage to, push my brand if I can, if it's appropriate, or, get the word out about the sport, whatever makes sense. But I'm not gonna treat it completely like another race, except on race day, I did treat it like another race, and I had developed a new warm-up routine, involved a lot of different mental exercises that I'd been doing, to get me to just focus on the process. And it became a little bit more difficult to filter out a lot of the noise, but I was able to do it most of the time. And so I just, during that one period of time, that race day, like I stuck to that routine. And but otherwise, I enjoyed the experience. Like, ate all the yummy, amazing Korean food that I could find, and visited all the cool little kiosks all over the village, and met new people, and all the things you'd love to do. I wasn't like a hermit the entire time.
So you didn't race the downhill though in Pyeongchang?
Correct. Yeah.
No downhill, but you did race the Super G.
I did. Wasn't really feeling it though. I hadn't, everyone else had done the downhill and they were used to the hill and that speed, but really I was doing that for the super combined, where we would have a run of slalom and maybe I'd have more of a chance, but I still really didn't want to go that fast, and my focus was entirely tech anyways. So I just I did it, with some effort, but it wasn't my primary focus.
And then the giant slalom was next, right?
Yeah. And that was what I really wanted. That I had put probably the most effort into that, and historically I'd been the best at giant slalom in my career. And the first run went just fine. I won the run by quite a bit and had a pretty awesome time. And all my mental exercises worked really well. But then I had just won the run, which was another huge problem, because now the spotlight's on you and you go last for the second run. So everyone's pushing the envelope a little bit more than they would normally, and you're the leader. The press wants a piece of you, so you've got to try to filter that out. And the mental exercises got really hard, and I had to restart my process so many times to try to filter out and just focus on, like, what is the course like? Like, I inspected it, but I can't remember it because there's so much other noise going on. So it took a couple tries, but I was able to mostly get back in the zone. And I did my second run, and I made a miscalculation. I completed the run, but I held back a teeny bit because I had a pretty good cushion. And it's still a risky endeavor. It's still a risky run, and the chances of falling are pretty good. And the course is really bumpy because I'm running last. So held back maybe a teeny bit. And I got to the bottom. I'm like, I had an okay run. I think it was good. And I got second place. The second guy, the first run, won the run and then the race. That was weird. He went faster.
By just a little bit too, right?
Yeah. I mean, he went faster. At the end of the day, he went faster. And that's just how it went. So, like, even when you're winning, you may not completely win. So I was very disappointed.
Medal too, right?
Yes. That was my first time. I'd never been in that position where, like, it was possible to win or even get a Paralympic medal, even getting close. I was freaking out then, but for like 2 seconds, I was really, really pissed at myself, and just raging mad. And then I realized that I actually got a Paralympic medal, so I calmed down and had a great time. But those emotions are still there. And then later on, I was like, whoa, I actually did this. This is amazing. And I was fine with it. So at the end of the day, it's all good.
So you won your first Paralympic medal in the giant slalom in your fourth games. So a lot of shots at it. This was your first Paralympic medal. And then what happened in the next race?
The slalom. Yeah. So the slalom, like, at that point, like, I got my medal. I did most of what I came there to do. Like, I was way more relaxed for the slalom. It was easier mentally to get through it. But slalom in the sit ski division is crazy anyways. There's so much attrition. Like, if half the field crashes, that's pretty normal. And the course was super bumpy. It was getting really, really warm. And I wouldn't consider either of my runs very good. It's just kind of like, who's the last man standing at the end of the day sometimes. And I guess they were decent, and I ended up second again. It was pretty pretty surprised. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Just it was icing on the cake, and that was a great day too. It was just way more relaxed and chill, and then a bonus. So
Now,
and then
one, I'm going to give a little bit of context. You're saying that you were running last. You were last among the monoskiers, who were last among all the other classes in the race. So the visually impaired skiers went, the standing skiers, then the monoskiers. So you were the very last guy. I mean, potentially the very last guy. There might have been, if it was a flip 30, right? So it's a flip 30. But the thing was that you were running behind everybody. When you talk about it being bumpy, you were like, probably in the first run, you might have been triple digits, right? You're running 110, 120, 130, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's bumpy. It's trench warfare. You have to expect to hit bumps really hard and be okay with that, because a lot of times you can't avoid it. And in a lot of runs, I can look ahead and maybe find a 6-inch patch of solid snow right next to the gate and aim my ski right for that and miss some of the bumps. I can work my way down the course that way, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Like, you're gonna go and you're gonna hit some huge ruts. So you hit them and you bounce into the air and you try to control the flight in the air and set your ski down back on the next edge, and that's your run. And that is just it's the surface of the course. Like, the course workers do the best they can, but it is inherently an unfair part of ski racing. There's nothing you can really do about it. So you learn to work with it, but yeah, you are literally the last racer up there. Like, the coaches are gathering around and the course workers are gathering around the start, like, because they want to break the course down and get home, and you still got to go. So that's a little weird. And like, the sun's going down. So also, yeah, you can't see the bumps coming because the light's not out anymore. And yeah, it's a road. It hurts. It's painful. It's nerve-wracking because you can't see what's coming. You just kind of expect a horrible bump every turn, and hopefully you're upright at the end of it. So
That was dicey for you a couple of times on that second run, where
Yep.
it looked like you were out of the course, then you were back in the course, and you had a really fast bottom split to put yourself
Yep.
back in the medals.
You hit those bumps, you get tossed in the air, and you've got to recover and get back your line, or at the gate, get polished. Like, all the loose snow will go off and it'll be down to like boilerplate ice. So hopefully you have sharp edges at that point, or if you do slip, maybe you can recover quickly and get back online. But that's just things you have to factor into your whole approach.
Now, the end of that race was what I would consider uncharacteristically emotional for you. It seemed like that I had not seen that side of Tyler very often, and what was that all about? I mean, was it fighting to get back into getting back into the race, to get back into the games after Sochi, or the whole thing, or what was going through your mind there?
I mean, it was on one level, it was a culmination of a lifetime of work to do that, and all the setbacks and the journey that took. Just all the people you meet and the experiences you have, and the ups and downs, the injuries, the mistakes, the solutions you find. Like, each one of those things is very emotionally charged at some point or another, and it all came just crashing down at one point. Like, it's like you realize the gravity of all of that all at once, and it's heavy. So yeah, and then of course the cameras are on you and they catch it all. So that's
Because
lovely.
they love it.
Yeah, they can't get enough of it. So yeah, that emotion's still there, but sometimes we just keep it crammed down inside. So
a little bit more bottled up. But in some ways, it sounds like what you're saying is that after 15 years of competing, and this is 15 years of competing on the highest level, but then there was also everything that it took to get to that point where you got your jacket for your junior year of high school. And it's almost like, I mean, it sounds like a really cool moment, because as you're talking about it, I'm saying you got to relive your career kind of in a moment after the finish. Is that really what it felt like, being able to and be open to that emotion?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, you relive all those experiences at once. And that's a great deal of energy right there. Really hard to do an interview with that going on. Yeah, it's intense.
But that's what we want to see as well, because it's the most human part. To watch you compete, we see you doing what you do best. So you are armored up for that performance. But when the armor drops, is in a lot of ways when we get to see ourselves, and we, sitting there on the couch, get to see the vulnerable Tyler, who had to fight his way through the hardest course to, in his last race and his second to last race, to win medals in both races. You talked about having to quit, and I'll get you out on this one, and deciding that you wanted to retire because in a lot of ways you wanted to do other things in your life. What is next, and is that obvious, and is it relatively easy to figure out the next direction?
Yeah, man, figuring out what next has been tough. There was nothing lined up for me on the other side. I had a lot of ideas of what I might want to do. And naively thought that maybe I could just start applying for top level positions and just boom, right in. Life is great again. That did not happen at all. And I got out of it, and I thought, I started looking at what it would take to move on and do something else that I might be interested in. It was like, everything I looked at was like, wow, I need a couple years for that one, need a couple years for that one. That one's definitely not going to happen. And it just got demoralizing. And so much of my identity had been wrapped up in ski racing. I didn't realize it at the time, but I realized it afterwards. And that got unhealthy too, mentally. And I got a lot of help from the USOC to try to deal with that. But a lot of that is on me at the end of the day, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'm closer now. It's been 3 years now. And I've learned a lot since then. I've realized how much I missed out on, life experience wise, education wise. And I'm going to go back for more education. I'm signed up to do an MBA starting in the fall. So I'm pretty excited about that. And hopefully that will lead to more opportunities, or at least the qualification to do a lot more. But yeah, I've had to, find my old identity again and figure out what's left and make kind of a new one. And it's been a lot of stop and go. Been on the adaptive side of things, I'm still skiing, but I'm doing it differently now. I'm working on a lot of trying to figure out how to access the backcountry efficiently, and developing equipment and technique to do that. So that's kind of like a fun side project. Trying to figure out social media and how all those algorithms work, and just before you were talking to me, I was studying financial accounting, so I'm not in the deep end when I get there. So yeah, there's a lot of just fun side projects and self-education, and maybe formal education pretty soon.
And looking at that, you're not, it's not unique to you. I mean, it feels unique in a lot of ways because we as athletes, or we as individuals, when it happens to us, feel like it's the most significant and difficult thing. But a lot of athletes have that same situation where the hardest thing to do is to retire and reinvent yourself. And one of the interesting things that you said there was that trying to reconnect with your old self, and that just to me begged the question of, well, what is your old self? What does your old self look like, and what do you want to bring forward?
You know, my old self was very intellectually curious about the world beyond ski racing. Different cultures, languages, geographies, people. You know, that's why I love the traveling so much and meeting new people. And you know, so that's a big part of my old self. And you know, I don't want to disregard all the ski racing that I did and what that developed. You know, I have the ability to analyze things pretty well and quickly, I think, and how to, you know, accomplish a complicated multi-year goal, among other things. Like, I don't have my resume in front of me, whatever crazy wording I use for all these other things, but I find that I can, to a point, kind of pick and choose, you know, some of the old stuff and some of the stuff I want to bring forward. So, you know, still trying to be adventurous and push the sport in a different direction because I love that part of it. Yeah, and I don't know what career that's going to bring me into, but I think I could excel in a lot of things if given the opportunity. So I'm going to go make that opportunity, and hopefully it'll lead to something.
That's great. Yeah, I can look back to meeting you when you were a young kid, and certainly seeing that curiosity in a variety of things. But the thing that sticks with me is that you weren't going to be denied. That no matter what was in front of you, you were going to figure out a way to make it work. And you talk about this in terms of problem solving, but you know, a fearless sense of I won't be denied. So that seemed like that's who you were back then, and I'm sure that's who you are now as well. And it's just a matter of, in some ways, letting yourself be yourself, because the transition is hard, and you've learned a lot of amazing things and done things that nobody would have. You know, most people never get a chance to do it, but there's no horizontal step from being the best in the world at your sport to whatever you're going to do next. But what got you to that place, I think, is something that will get you to a place that's really fulfilling moving forward. So, Tyler, thank you for sharing your story with us, and letting us show your one of your most difficult times as well. So I appreciate that too.
No, this was fun. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, good. Well, best of luck to you, Tyler. Thank you to all of you for listening in tonight. If you didn't catch the whole thing, it will be on the One Revolution page right afterwards, so you can go and watch the whole interview in its entirety. It will also watch for the Nametags Chat podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on Google, it's on Pandora. You can find it on all of these podcasts. Watch for the other podcasts as well, from other previous guests and actually future guests too. We'll get some future guests, and we'll continue to put these up there. But Tyler, thanks a ton. Best of luck. I hope to see you on the hill. Hope to see you elsewhere. Hope to see you. So thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.